Hey there, my name is Alex, I am the Silver Mont, and I've not made any videos on it for a while, but I'm still playing Genshin Impact. Genshin Impact. I've been playing that game since launch. Whilst my interest in it waxes and wanes, I have kept up to date on everything. In this video, I'm going to answer one question overall. How is it 5 years in? Is it worth coming back? Is it worth picking up in the first place? Indeed, how is Nod Krai? Actually, I suppose that's more than one question, isn't it? But the main one here, though, is Genshin worth playing? Natlan, as a region, wasn't amazing. The two friends who started playing Genshin along with me back at launch more or less dropped it completely during Natlan. That seems to be a fairly common occurrence in the community. I don't have stats, of course, and I'm not doing the whole, oh, Genshin's dying, but I see a lot of people dropped it, or said they're going to drop it, or just complained about Natlan, how it caused them to lose interest in the game. Now, it wasn't anything as drastic as Dawn Trail, which was so bad it killed my interest in Final Fantasy XIV. Dawn Trail was just a complete nightmare, but it definitely felt rather lacking. Part of that is no doubt because Natlan had a lot of hype leading up to it, the nation of war and dragons, and it didn't really live up to that. Not in the ways that people were hoping for. And considering Natlan is the nation of fire, we didn't really get many fire characters in Natlan. But now, we're in Nod Krai, the unexpected region that serves to expand on many story elements before we wrap up the Tevat chapter of the story. Or you could say Nod Krai is a chapter of transition for the story as we head into the climax of the first story arc. I'll be honest though, I'm liking Nod Krai quite a lot so far. There's a strong Finnish influence here, which I'm likewise enjoying. And whilst you won't care about this, I've been writing a book this last year and a half, which likewise has a fairly heavy influence from Finnish mythology. It's a large part of the world building, the lore building, so it's been really interesting for me seeing a lot of Finnish things in Genshin here. The new characters have so far been appealing, the setting is interesting, and I'm curious to see where the story goes. And the pacing of the story is feeling decent, because Genshin's definitely had some pacing issues now and then. Not Cry's brought in a lot of nice quality of life features too. Condensing resin now uses more, I think it uses like 60 instead of 40. And we have the option of spending 40 resin instead of 20 inside a domain. So you can spend 20 to get, normal rewards, you can spend 40, get 2 times rewards, you can spend condensed, get 3 times rewards. Artifacts now show us the hidden 4th stat, which, well, means it's no longer hidden, really. Lots of small things like that, which would have been really nice and should have been put in a long time ago, frankly. Combined with the years of other quality of life features, it makes Genshin a lot smoother than it was at launch, and it wasn't terrible at launch either, frankly. But as a new player, well, I can't imagine what that would be like. Part of me almost wants to make a new account or swap servers or whatever just so I can see what the fresh experiences are like, as I can't imagine it, frankly. Would you not just be bombarded with 10 million story quests and events, or do they drip feed it to you in a more organic manner? How do you pass all of that? I've seen what other long-running games are like. Destiny 2, and World of Warcraft specifically, they're absolute nightmares. In WoW, for example, you jump in and you get a short tutorial that's not really tailored to your race or your class like it was back in the day. It's just you get dumped on like a Horde island or an Alliance island. You spend, I don't know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes there, then you leave, and then they're like, hey, here's 20-ish years of content. Pick an expansion and go through it, I guess. There's no cohesion. There's no linear story. It's a complete mess. Destiny 2 is kind of the same, and in some ways, even worse because Destiny had a seasonal storyline, and now you're jumping in, like, I don't know, 30 seasons in or whatever, and some content is missing because they put it in the Destiny Vault for a while. I think they stopped doing that now because it was one of the stupidest decisions anyone's ever made in a long time when it comes to games. But it's horrible for a new player. Genshin, at least, has a linear story, and I would imagine the smartest thing to do is just to go through that. And they probably, again, I don't know this, because I don't know if I can even do another account and, like, have a look, Maybe if I like started one up on my PlayStation, I don't know, but I digress. I imagine they probably drip feed it through adventure ranks. Like as you adventure rank up, they probably, drip feed you more of the content. Instead of just you start it up and they are like, hey, here's 5 years worth of content. Good luck figuring out what to do. But I also think they have some sort of kind of quick start feature if you want to like rapidly get to the new areas. Because I know one of my friends who played Genshin but very on and off, sometimes he would roll for a new character, but then to level up that character he would need to go to an area that he's not got to in the story yet and he can't really probably get there, and there are problems like that. There's no game that's been ongoing for years that doesn't have them. I will say, Final Fantasy XIV offers a pretty good experience for new players. And on the off chance that you are about to start or have just started 14, yeah, play up to Endwalker, beat the final boss of Endwalker, and then bounce. You do not want to see what they did in Dawntrail. It's not worth it, trust me. And I don't say that lightly. I have 5,000 hours in that game. 5,000! And Dawntrail just made me nope out completely. But going back to Genshin, you have things like sunsetted mechanics, if we can use that term. Take Hangouts, for example. That was a system they dropped a year, 2 years ago, I believe. It's been replaced with a far superior system that we now have, where you'll organically meet characters out in the world, making it feel more alive, and doesn't take so much time. Because Hangouts is like you would go through them, then you would have to go through them again to get through the different branching paths, and it was very strange. And I get what they were going for, but I don't think it really worked, and this new system is much better. But making the transition from one to the other as a new player might feel weird. You're like, oh, Hangouts, okay, I understand what this is. And then suddenly they're not there anymore, and you're like, wait, so now I have to adopt to something new? Because you're getting years of progression and evolution condensed into however long you are playing as a new player. But you should still do the Hangouts, as they did consist of a decent amount of content, with rewards for one thing. Now the endgame has at least remained somewhat consistent. We had Abyss Spiral for like the first 3 years of the game, maybe a bit more, then we had the Imaginarium Theatre, and then recently, like just a couple of patches ago, they put in Stygian Onslaught, I think it's called. I must admit, I've never been a fan of Genshin's endgame. The Abyss is a DPS race. That's all it is. The theatre is slightly less of one. It involves a bit more horizontal progression instead of vertical progression, you might say. I'll go more into that in a moment. Stygian is just another DPS race, but even worse? It's not fun. It's not a good endgame. Skill is irrelevant in Stygian Onslaught. It is purely a check of how much money you have spent on the game. It doesn't matter how good you are. Like, it's literally impossible if you haven't got a certain level of strength on your characters, which can only be acquired through, effectively, spending money. And the rewards, they are temporary weapon skins for the players who don't need them. Because here's the thing, the reason most people in Genshin wanted weapon skins is because they're using, say, a 5-star character with a 4-star weapon, because they aren't able to get their character's 5-star weapon. But people who spend a lot of money on Genshin, they're able to get, a C6 character with a R5 weapon, because they're spending money. They can do that. And the character's weapons usually match the character's appearance. But when you're using, like, a character who wears all blue, then you have, like, a giant pink and green sword on them that you got from an event, it seems jarring, and people want to have weapon skins, weapon glamour, weapon transmog. Look at Kazuha. His best weapon doesn't really match him all that well. Then there's a weapon specifically kind of tailored for his design, but the stats on it and everything don't match and mesh with his gameplay style at all. It's a very bizarre system, so it's just rewarding people with something they don't really need. And I'm not complaining that whales get some sort of reward. I mean, I would argue that having a C6 character is enough of a reward, but how about things like a nameplate, or like a border for the avatar, something like that? Not a weapon skin that's something a lot of free-to-play players really want. So Stygian is the same thing as the Abyss. They both are just kind of pointless DPS races. Theatre is more a test of how many characters you have. So for the Abyss, you can do the Abyss with like 8 characters, and if you have like 2 C6 characters, you're gonna annihilate the Abyss. Stygian, you might need a bit more, but for the theatre, you need a lot of characters, so instead of going up, you need to go horizontal. I kind of prefer that, because it's something, but it's still kind of like a DPS race, and DPS races are not a fun sort of endgame, because it means there's only one way to build characters, for maximum damage. If that's the only thing that matters, why do you even bother having anything other than damage in the game? It renders a lot of characters obsolete and pointless. It renders basically any stat that isn't tied to damage is irrelevant then. Example, in Dark Souls, I could build for maximum damage, but I could also build for maximum poise. I could just face tank the enemy, or I could build for status ailments. They might poison the enemy very slowly, but it'll still get them. Maybe I could even make a support build, summon other players and buff and heal them. Having one way to play, which is just all front-loaded damage in as short amount of time as possible, being the only way to do the highest level of content, is boring. It would be like if every raid encounter in Final Fantasy, World of Warcraft, all these things, if they were all just DPS races. Now you might argue they all are technically DPS races because most encounters have enrage timers, but those are usually more of a loose gear check just so that you can't spend like 30 minutes on a boss. And of course DPS checks do exist, but they're not usually on every single fight, and that's the only mechanic they have. That would be really boring. But then, I don't play Genshin for the endgame or the hard content. I do Abyss Spiral, and I more or less max those out. I can't do Stygian at the maximum level of difficulty, because I haven't spent money, which is the only thing really holding me back there. Which is fine, like I'm not really complaining about that. It's just an issue that if Stygian is going to be your DPS check, Constellation check, Whale check, sure, that's fine. Imaginarium and Abyss should be more about how you build your teams, and less just front-loading DPS. And you can make the argument that Abyss is a bit more generous in how you sort of build around things, because, you know, people go, oh, I've used 3-star characters. Not that there are 3-star characters, but, you know, they go through it using very mundane and easy to acquire or starting equipment, like, oh, I beat the Abyss using only Amber and blah blah blah. Stuff like that. That's fine. But what I'm saying is they should be more creative than it just being hit enemy, kill enemy in a minute and a half, or you suck. Overall though, moving back to Nod Krai as a whole, the new elements, blending story and character quests amongst them, having these incidental character tales or anecdotes, whatever the game wants to refer to them as, I like all that. Before, it was very formulaic in Genshin. A new patch would come out, you would have the main story, and then you would have the new character who has their character story. Those being separate sometimes was strange and unnecessary, and having it so it's more like the new characters are in the story makes more sense to me. Although I do think there will be occasions going forward where we will need to have separate story quests for characters if they don't have a reason to be there in the main story, if that makes sense. But there are some elements of Genshin that are still completely baffling 5 years in. The co-op is the big one for me. Why do you even have co-op in this game if it's worthless 90% of the time? Domains were harder and took longer. Now, with the Nod Cry patch, they did attempt to adjust it a bit to make it, you know, faster and better in co-op, but I have no reason to enter co-op. Sometimes I will go and I'll go into Stygian and I'll try and help people who might be, you know, low rank, new to the game. They need help in Stygian, where I can actually help them because I can bring in my pretty strong characters. Still free to play, but, you know, I have a pretty strong Maverwika, I have a pretty strong Nouvelet, Clorind, I got some good characters. So I can try and help people in Stygian, but there's no way to specify that. I have no control over who I'm getting into a match with, which is weird. They should have some sort of matchmaking thing there where it's like, oh, I'm a new player looking for help, or I'm a, you know, veteran player looking to help, stuff like that. And even so, I don't get anything for that, and still it's technically a loss for me in terms of, you know, or efficiency. If I want to just be efficient, I would just go into Stygian, like a low level, and just whip through it as fast as I can to spend all my resin. I don't get anything for helping people, which doesn't necessarily need to be the case, but it should be incentivized. I can let my friend join my world, but the only reason to do that really would be to have them either harvest materials that I don't need, or if they need to do a boss that they can't do in their world because they haven't reached it yet and I have, and I can help them do the boss. But that's really it. So what's the point? Why is not exploration shared in co-op? Why can't we do the story in co-op? Are you saying it would be immersion breaking for my friend to be watching the cutscene at the same time as me? Like, why? I don't understand. Why is that not possible? I'm not too fussed about the story being co-op, although it would be nice. Now you might say, oh, I mean, the story is just all watching cutscenes. Why do you need to do that with a friend? So yeah, I get that in a sense. But it's still nice to do story, and then in between the cutscenes, you talk about what happened and stuff. Exploration's the big one, though. There's no reason that when a new region comes out, me and my friends, we can't explore it together and share progress. I brought this up before, and people have said, OMG, but then you would get double the rewards. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. Let's say you go to a new area, you find a puzzle, your friend is there, you both complete the puzzle, you open the chest, you both get the rewards from the chest, but if your friend then leaves and goes back to their world, the chest is gone because it's already flagged as complete or open. So when you go back to your world, it's not there because you already got it. That's such a simple system that many games use. None of this is new or innovative. There's no reason Genshin shouldn't work that way. I can't believe that I'm the only one who wants that from Genshin. The main reason to play Genshin, for me, is to explore the world, get the treasure, because then that treasure allows me to, pull for the characters who I think are cool or have an interesting playstyle. Co-op just feels pointless. It feels half-assed. 5 years in, which is insane to me. I could get if Genshin had a very bare-bones co-op, year one, when they launched, but now? Why? Why is it still so pointless? It's the biggest issue I have with Genshin, which is otherwise a very high quality, polished game where, they bring in new events all the time, the events, they're always trying something new. Again, it's not like Final Fantasy, where every single event in that game is, oh, it's Christmas, go and talk to the Christmas NPC, then go and talk to 3 townspeople about Christmas, then come back here and get a hat. It's not like that. Every event in Genshin is different. Apart from when they recycle events like the hide and seek one, which they've brought back a few times. But even then, they iterate on them and improve them. But they've tried so many different game modes in that. That's good, that's nice. As I said, it's a very high quality, it's a very polished game, which makes the weird, janky, pointless co-op really stand out. It feels like a thing that they started doing and then gave up on and just left it like that for 5 years. So, for new players, assuming you don't drown in content, I think now is a good time to get into Genshin because of all these really nice quality of life features. For returning players, depends on what made you quit. Cutscenes can't really be skipped, which is a nightmare, because I'm sure we've all run into situations where we watched a cutscene, disconnected either at the end, or, this happened to me in Natlan. A little story quest event cutscene happened, then I saw some treasure off to the side, I went to that, and I left the quest area in doing so. So then when I went back there, this is all like 100 yards away, by the way, I went back there and I had to watch the whole cutscene again, which, and there's no way to skip it. All you can do is speed it up by trying to mash through the dialogue. And also, very minor nitpick, but I can't stand the fact that Genshin, every time a dialogue finishes and you press A or whatever to get to the next dialogue, it goes beep. Why can't we turn that beep off? Why do I need to hear beep between every single line of dialogue, of which there are millions? Dialogue itself can still be frustrating. When an NPC explains something in great detail, then Paimon effectively repeats it back to us after. It's like, well, hey traveller, can you go over to the Nod Krai crumb cake facility and open the door, go inside and get me some cakes because I'm hungry? Then you leave, and as you're leaving, Paimon's like, traveller, we should go over to the crumb cake factory and open the door and get some crumb cakes for that person because they want some crumb cakes. Yes, Paimon, I am aware of that. That said, I haven't noticed it being quite so bad with Nod Krai. So in summary, it is a good time to pick up Genshin. Maybe it's a good time to return, but the biggest thing about coming back is going to be, do the characters appeal to you? Because that's the main thing in Genshin, honestly, is do you want to pull for the characters? In Natlan, I wanted Chaska and kind of Mabuika. That was about it. Didn't care really for anyone else. I did end up getting Veressa somehow. Not even sure how that happened. Same with Escoffier. But so far in Nod Cry, I wanted Lauma. I want Flynn's. I'm not going to get Flynn's because he needs an Nefer, who I don't want. I want Varka. I want Nefer. I probably want Columbina because we must get all the gods/archons. So I think they're kind of stepping up a bit with the characters. But again, that's like super subjective. But if you have any specific questions about Genshin, whether as someone who wants to come back or has never played it at all, let me know. Ask them in the comments and I will get back to you. As once again, I don't really talk about it too much or make many videos about it, but I have played a lot of Genshin and I know a lot about Genshin.